Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Marcus from TCG Discussions coming at you with an OP09 tier list video today. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So I have been completely and utterly way too busy with life, working, so I haven't made it a lot of content. I have been keeping up with the game and continuously making content for the game. Just haven't been able to upload it. I have a new editor that I'm going to ship off all my videos to from OBS, and then simultaneously along with that, I have been doing multiple training sessions, some of which is going to be recorded, and then we're going to probably end up uploading those training sessions with our thoughts and our notes in it. You're gonna see me like end up quitting out a lot with Blackbeard because I just detect hate leader effect. Like, it is just such a powerful tool, and then you can end up doing so much in a turn and like end up forgetting about it. I think Blackbeard is gonna be like the highest skill deck in the game. Actually, let's just go ahead and talk about him right now with like our tier 1. You know, maybe if I can find him. So Blackbeard, you know, in 09, this is probably like the big boogeyman of the format right now. A lot of people think that he's the best deck in the game. I think that is incorrect. I don't think that he is the best. I think probably Shanks, Dofi, or Pluffy. That's probably one of those three. And the problem is that when it comes to this deck, there are two things that are extremely difficult. The first is you have to understand your matchup going into everything. The second is that there are complete auto losses to what you're trying to do. Like, an example, you auto lose to like red aggro. Shanks can be built that way. You lose to purple Luffy. It's like my test group is like pretty much like 100% confirmed. It's like 90% win if you just play correctly with purple Luffy and, you know, don't like jack around and try to do some like stupid stuff. If Blackbeard messes up one time and doesn't activate like the effect, they basically get mapped out and auto lose. And then Doflamingo, if played correctly, also auto wins. It's a little bit harder for Dofi because like you can do a little bit about his stuff, but like once you start getting into like Jozu territory and everything else, it gets a little bit weird for Blackbeard to have to out some cards. Blackbeard basically from the start of the game has to be like pitching cards, and if one Jinbei gets through, the game is over. In the Shanks matchup, it's more about who goes second. We have found that like Blackbeard can win going first more than Shanks can, but going second, it's pretty difficult for either player. So it's one somewhere in there. But I'm excited as a black player that this is coming for a number of reasons. I think that BY and some of these other decks that I'm kind of detesting in the format are finally going to be gone, and I'll be happy to see them go. So, but he is definitely a tier 1 deck. He's going to be at the top of the meta, like, make no mistake about it. Doflamingo, also tier 1. This guy's not going anywhere for a very, very long time. He's arguably going to be the best deck in the game for like literally until they do something and ban him. He has got an insane amount of tools. The current list iteration that I'm playing, I just keep getting closer and closer to a Japanese list with like Jozu, and there's reasons for that. I think the Shanks matchup for Jozu is like incredible for a number of reasons. Let's just start with Lucky Roo. Lucky Roo is probably like the best card in the matchup against Doflamingo. So it stops an attack and blows a card up in the process. So when he's board spamming, 2 cards can basically go at the same time. But the issue is that with Jozu and Trafalgar Law, this is extremely mitigated. Lucky Roo just basically becomes like the Kuzan bounce. Same thing for black. If they want to play like Kuzan or anything passively like that, Doflamingo just outs the card immediately. Brook is now probably the most staple and best card to play for black in general, unless you're playing Blackbeard, just because Brook gets the immediate KO value and reduction without simultaneously having to like do some other stuff. Let's actually just go in here and take a look at a couple of lists that we've been kind of drumming up and cooking up. So when it just comes to like black, for example, I think that when we talk about Luchi, because I don't think Luchi's dead by any means, I think he's still a tier 1 leader. Like, you know, I played against a Luchi in the East yesterday, and he was playing some kind of similar build to what I have been working on for a long time, and just kind of disturbing how good it is to play against my own madness. But all that to say, this is like the current list. We went for a more draw advantage and centric build. We have red rocks instead of gravity blade, because with the Jozu and law bounce, we're just returning so many cards to the hand. Red rock is really here only for use as Captain Kid, because if you play Doflamingo and they play Bonnie and you don't have this card, you've lost the game. I don't care what's on the board or how many of these cards you have. It's going to be too easy for her to defend with the blockers and everything, and it's just going to be a real pain in the minutes. Even if you bounce one to hand, like, you basically have to swing 8 at them. You can't just overcommit because they usually have a blocker, and then yeah, it just gets super annoying. But it's pretty standard. You know, the Puddings, the Sengokus, Perona's the best card in the deck. A lot of people have slept on this card for like some reason. We cut Teach. Teach was like a pretty big deal for me for a while. The reason we cut Teach is that he just does not give us the advantage that we're looking for. Having to put a card from our hand on the top of our deck and then having them swing into it in the counter round and all this other stuff, it stymates our deck, doesn't get us deeper, and then, like, when we're digging for cards like Jinbei because we don't have them yet, it's a kind of a problem. Yeah, other than that, for Jozu, I'm actually like super big on this card right now. I like it a lot. There is a Jozu loop that like you're trying to avoid. A lot of people are playing 7-cost Doflamingo to break the Jozu lock, which is fine. I think you have to kind of like grind through it, and I totally get that. The response to this card is Mihawk, and then you just keep escalating, and then it gets a little, I think the list starts to drift a little bit too far from like viability. This card, it may be a little bit viable, but like at 7 Dawn to bounce a 7 or less feels a little bit weird when you could also just spend 7 Dawn to break this and something else with Gravity Blade, but you do get the body, which is something to note, okay? But Dofi is extremely scary, and it's mainly because of this card and this card. Like, both of these are really stupid. You can decrease her for an increase in this, but I think 3 Pudding right now is like just optimal. If anything, I'd probably cut this like Croc 2K, because this draw Croc is actually pretty crazy in the deck. Maybe a Sengoku cut down for another Perfume Fumer, because like Sengoku is like also like a non-warlord card, and it's kind of but he is a searcher for Jinbei, which I think is like incredibly important. But overall, I like this list a lot. I think that it's pretty good. Some people may cut down a Jozu as well. I think that could be a little bit too much for another Perfume Fumer. It's up to you, whatever you want to do, right? Let's get back to the tier list. But Doflamingo's not going anywhere. It's going to be a very strong deck. He just vomits bodies and does what he does, right? And if you're Blackbeard, you can mitigate this. And if you don't mitigate it for 1 turn and they play Jinbei, you ought to lose the game. If anyone doesn't understand like that matchup, it's actually that serious. Like, literally 1 Jinbei resolution is enough for you to end the game. So if they're going second and then you like take first from them, and for some stupid reason you decide to take first from them, and then they play down 1 Jinbei at that junction on their second turn, and you have not used your leader ability, you've auto lost right there on the spot. So just be wary of that, okay? Next, we're gonna talk about good old Shanks. Shanks. So Shanks is a super strong deck. Definitely tier 1 in my opinion. I think that he does a lot of things that are incredibly unique, and he has a lot of tools that a lot of people really wouldn't consider. So let's go over the list real quick. So this is the generic list that I'm working with right now. I think these blockers, both Silver's Rayleigh and Lucky Roo, are incredibly important. My friend Victor, who's one of my test partners, also plays Shiraya, which we found that like blockers in the Blackbeard matchup actually help mitigate a lot of the game plan going second, forcing the removal to be out on these cards, which Blackbeard is okay with. But the thing is that Blackbeard struggles in handling multiple bodies. So unless there's like a Van Augur that's already sitting on the board, and they have to like do some weird funky math with like Laboon, a dot Q, and then another dot Q and something else. Like they just can't handle multiple bodies like super well unless you're playing like multiple events and something else, right? But this card, for example, is very, very strong in the matchup. It's not a card that you'd immediately think is like very good with Shanks, but when you stop and look at like what this card does, or Otama or something else, this card starts to make a lot more sense, right? Just because you're not in the range doesn't mean like you can't play this, get value on getting rid of a card, and then play this on the following subsequent turn, or have this set up on the board or something like that, something of that nature. Ace is extremely sticky against Blackbeard. Blackbeard is probably one of the only decks that has the least trouble with this card due to Liberation. I'll show you the current Blackbeard list that we're working with right now. Liberation, and this is like a secret like tech. You saw it first here, or probably on a Japanese video. Liberation is like one of the cards, just really outs this Ace, like not as sticky, but against Luchi specifically, it's terrifying. This card just gets a dot on it, swings for 7, and then it's just getting this value of like not being able to be removed unless it's like double KO'd in the matchup. And then even then, depending on how much Dawn we have allocated, we could like Red Hawk or Rad Beam if we're low life to quote unquote save this card, and then it just becomes that permanent thorn in their side. With Newgate, we basically have a Jack of Return where we're doing the removal, and then once 10-12 Shanks is on the board, it's just extremely difficult decks to basically deal with this card. Blackbeard basically has to deal with it by countering with Blackbeard 10-12, or playing a whole host of litany of removal of cards just to get rid of this, and it's pretty difficult. I won't lie to you. This card super carries the matchup. In the mirror, it is a race to get to this card. If you don't know what it does, this is a passive permanent. All of your opponent's characters get minus 1,000 power, and this coupled with the leader ability makes for some pretty insane numbers. When you play against Doflamingo, getting this card is also hyper important because it just starts making the math for all their cards like really bad. The cards that are turned sideways get swung out a lot easier. This coupled with the leader effect can make a 6k completely like negligent to you, and then with the defenses that exist in the deck, like you kind of like get rid over. Silver's Rayleigh is also very strong. Both of these cards are MVPs to carry you to get to this card in the matchup against Doflamingo, and then this card is just absolutely crazy. I saw this played in a Japanese tournament, and I fell in love with it. He was playing 4 of this and 4 Rad Beam. I'm in real life, I'm probably gonna play like the 4 Rad Beam just to like have maximum bricks in my deck, but this Red Hawk is like really, really good, especially against Doflamingo. So it went to one of your leaders or characters against 4,000 power, and then K up to one of your opponent's characters to 4,000 or less. So a 5k coupled with our leader ability dies, we get to get out of a 8k potential or lower swing, and we're just getting rid of a card. And then at 10 Dawn, when we play down Silver's Rayleigh, right, like Luffy Taro can get reduced by 3, something can get reduced by 2. Well, then on the following subsequent turn, if Luffy Taro is down to 5, we can then activate Shanks' ability and then activate Red Hawk on the Luffy Taro, removing the card on top of it, just giving us a lot of value. Just some cards to note about this. He's super sticky. This card is like what you're racing to. This card is obviously broken. This card is also really strong. This version of this card is $32 a piece right now. And then of course, as if Red needed something like this, you know, with all the Diablo Jambes and everything, on top of it they got Goldie Roger. This card is the only card that going first Blackbeard must, and I mean must play around. He is extremely annoying for a number of reasons, because it's not a matter of whether or not Blackbeard can close Shanks down to 0 life. It's a matter, in most of the time, on whether or not they have this card sitting in their hand with whatever else they have on the board that's about to break free to be able to swing with him. And that is where this deck gets truly frightening, because even if you're beating Shanks, if they have like 2 this, or 1 of this on the board, and you get him to 0, and then the following turn with like 2 or 1 life, he plays this card, you're in a world of trouble. So Gold Roger, it's a 10-13 that has rush, highest power stat in the game, and then if you or your opponent are at 0 life and someone activates blocker, you win the game. Here's the bottom line, right? This card just basically turns every card into Diablo Jambe on the board, because you can't block it, you have to counter out of everything. And when they have a 10-12, a 10-12, and an 8, an 8K swing, and this 13 and leader swing that's all unblockable, I don't care who you are, you're done. You're toast. The only deck that isn't toast to that question, quote unquote, is like red purple Luffy with like you know, Newgate and like triple gum giant or something like that. Like, and even then they're probably still cooked. Like they're cooked, bro. They're cooked. They're probably cooked, man. And it's just honestly one of the most annoying cards. Other than that, you know, Ben Beckman, not much to talk about. You know, he's just kind of like that annoying piece that Blackbeard actually has to play around this card the entire time. Like if they're approaching 7 or 8 dawn, like the reason why I forfeited most of my games during our training session is like I'll get to like the Shanks will be going to like 7 or 8 dawn and I'll just forget to activate leader ability. And when they're at 10, it's a little bit different because of this card, right? They're kind of incentivized to play this card and these cards. And I've gotten away sometimes in a couple of our games with just not activating the ability, not because I forgot, but like because I wanted to keep the cards in hand for counter to save my Blackbeards if they have to block one of these. But then this card just killing Burgesses and trashing him it's too strong. If Burgesses is above, like for example, if they're going to 7 dawn and Burgesses is already at like 8k power, it's okay. Shanks is very strong. And if you're gonna ask me like what's the overall best deck to play in 09, it's probably Shanks. Shanks can do a lot to everybody. He doesn't have like a particular bad matchup. He just has like bad curves. Like going second against Blackbeard is unfavored. He can go either way against Doflamingo. Going first against Purple Luffy is really terrible. Basically because they get to an extra dawn for free, and so they don't have to take as much life to ramp. And then if they double Luffy Taro, Shanks is kind of shot in the water. Like there is not a lot he can do to double Luffy Taro play. So speaking of that, dude, where is he? I gotta find him. Oh man, right here. Here he is, the big bad. Okay, Purple Luffy. This deck is like actually insane. I'm just gonna say this right now. My list is heavily inspired by Cardi Kaizoku. I agree with him a lot on a lot of stuff, and then there's a few tech spots in here for me that I like. I love Gear 5, so like I'm gonna play this card. You could probably cut this card and like 2 of these for like a 9 lin, but there's some really nice tech with this card that a 9 lin is probably just outright the better card to play, but at the end of the day, I love Nika, so I'm just playing this card for fun right now. So you can probably cut this. This is just like a tech for me, but the rest of this deck I think is going to be like obligatory pretty soon, like Law, top 4 searcher for anything that's like this guy or like the rest of the deck that's not this. Basically searches this, not this, but this, and not this. So it's like only 3 cards in the entire deck that it doesn't search, which is crazy. This card is basically a better Kaido on play, just on minus, and then he gains rush and you draw a card, which is really good for a 9-10 swing. You know, take a turn Luffy, we all know about that. It's kind of contradictive to this, but I wanted like another really big card. But this card is crazy. In the Blackbeard matchup specifically, and even this card in the Blackbeard matchup is actually really crazy too, because if they don't activate the ability and you can kill them because this card exists, they're cooked, because they won't be able to get out of like the multiple swings that you get out of your leader and everything else. They can just be cooked with this card, and even playing this down as a 10-12 vanilla for Blackbeard is extremely annoying. But Luffy Taro, Heart and Soul deck, this is like the card that like super makes the deck go round and round. He plays out Zoro, he plays out this, he plays out this, he plays out Usopp. Why Usopp? And we'll get to him in a second, but this is the goal of the deck. If you play multiples of this in a game and they do not remove them, you just win in every matchup across the board. The only matchup that this deck truly struggles into is Shanks, because once Shanks gets to 10-12 on the board, there is not a lot this deck can do. And Shanks has the defense between Lucky Roo, for example. This deck has like no removal, like absolutely no removal, right? There's nothing you can do to Lucky Roo. And he's just going to get value in sniping these cards all the time. And then once they get to 10-12, this card is irrelevant. They don't care about your life really. They just care about the fact that your cards are way weaker, and then they can control a lot with Red Hawk, gets rid of this. It gets rid of this. If Rayleigh, you play to the board, reduce this down, and then leader ability or Red Hawk by itself just kills like these cards, and then it just gets really weird. We'll talk about Usopp for a second. So why Usopp? So it's the reason is the curve of 4 against Blackbeard is like really important. So if you're going first or second, you want to see maximum number of cards that you can play on 4. Okay, even if you don't get on plays for it. Blackbeard cannot, and I mean repeat, they cannot stop your 4-on curve. They basically have to give you the first 2 turns of on plays, because if they're pitching cards from their hand and they play Hachinuso at the same time, they will not have enough cards in the end game. This is probably the hardest counter to Blackbeard in the game if you're wanting to know. Like, if you think that Blackbeard's going to be the best deck in the format and you're wanting to play the deck that beats Blackbeard, it's this one for sure. There's a whole litany of reasons why this is the case. He has the Doflamingo problem for Blackbeard, and that is, like, if Jinbei resolves and they play, like, multiple bodies, Blackbeard loses, because there's going to be more pressure on the board than he can deal with in the early game. Well, the same thing applies to this card. In the early game, like if you're at 6 and can take a life and go to 7 and your opponent has not used the Blackbeard effect, you win because you're going to play this into this or this. But this card, especially in the Blackbeard matchup, is the MVP. This is the strongest card against Blackbeard by far. It's actually really not close. There isn't a better card in the deck against Blackbeard besides probably this one. But like the reason is because it starts to become a game of math. Blackbeard is a deck that is notorious for playing at a high skill curve with low cards in hand and understanding high level game states. Okay, Songro tosses that completely out the window for Blackbeard. The reason that that's the case is because, number one, this card isn't affected by Blackbeard's effect. So if you're playing it or several copies of it, the card they pitch from their hand just basically doesn't do anything. The second is it's a 5 cost, so it's a little bit trickier for them to get rid of. They have to, dot Q, which is like the main removal, has to have Laboon next to it in order for them to get value, which is unsearchable. Furthermore, on top of it, they can finger pistol this card, but they can't liberation it without another reducer. But the issue still is that with all that, you're committing to removal and not playing Jesus Burgess. So with Burgess, he becomes incredibly pivotal to your late game pressure. But the problem becomes that if you're focused on removing cards, you're not playing him to the board. And by not playing him to the board, if you get into a situation where in the late game you have to play tit for tat like the board that they're producing, you lose. Because when you go to play Blackbeard, you're stopping one card. Let's walk through the curve for a second. Let's say Luffy goes first. He plays Law. And Law is actually super important in the matchup because if they play Lafitte early, you can attack with this card into it. Takes his life, goes to 4, plays Zorajuro. It's a nice 4/6, right? You know, he's doing his thing. He searches a card. He searches Luffy Taro. Next turn, you go into 6. They have to activate ability here because if you have Luffy Taro in hand and have searched it between the 2 searchers or whatever, they're cooked. They are literally cooked. If this 4/6 is on the board, this is on the board, and then this plays this. The game is like actually 100% comfortably monumentally over. There's nothing they can do anymore. Same also applies to this card, Usopp, just to have like the body on 4, and he's also a 4/6, which is nice. But all that to say, you'll take your life, you'll go to Luffy Taro. So now you've got Law, you've got Zoro, you've got Luffy Taro, okay? And notice what's happening here. You've taken 2 life, you've probably countered and taken 1 attack over the next 2. And Blackbeard's going into 6 Dawn. This is like the perfect curve to play Burgesses, but look at what they're staring at. So what do? Do you play at this point Jesus? Because like, let's say like your first turn or whatever was like Lafitte. Well, Law swung into that, it's probably gone. And if you protected it with a 2K, then Leader probably swung into the card. Then on the following turn, right, if I played this and you didn't liberate it or finger pistol it or play Jesus there, it's like good on you, but now you have to take the pressure of the card. And so there's almost incentive for you to swing at this card to get rid of it. And then the best option here, right, for removal wise, like just like speaking pure removal, right, is to probably play like the horse and finger pistol the Luffy Taro. That would be like the most ideal scenario, right? And let's just say that that is what you did. Let's even just say that You could take it either way. You either established a Burgesses or you liberated and finger pistoled this off the board, and then you did stronger. You took a card out of your hand, you drew a card, and then you finger pistoled this Luffy Taro. The next turn, they take a life at 10 and play double Sanguro. And now what do? You're going in 8 Dawn. Let's say you want to play double Burgesses. Like, you just want to get them on the board. You throw them on the board. Well, here's the problem. If they have any of these cards in their hand, the Burgesses don't matter anymore. These cards are going to start getting immediate swing value. And for the record, you've had to pitch every single turn for this just to like shut these off. And you are now in a whole host of trouble, because this is when they start playing like Kid Blocker, Nami Blocker, Law Blocker, and then leave a Dawn or 2 up while getting 5, 6, 6 pokes, draw 2. And keep in mind, you've minused a card every single time in your hand since the second turn of the game for this deck. So you're now down for sure -3 cards, at least in the line that I've talked about, from the 2 turns that you've had to pitch for turn 3 and turn 4. And then another for turn 5. This would be like the turn you're going to play into your Blackbeard. And then following that, you had to get rid of several cards for removal. Like, that's 6. And Sanguro just drew them 2 cards in a deficit in your favor. That's 8. And what ends up happening is that because this card exists right here, when you go to swing at Luffy with whatever it is, it like actually doesn't matter. It could be at anything. This card just saves them, and it doesn't cost Purple Luffy any cards in hand. It just costs them Dawn. And then you die on the crack because the board is like far too wide. You couldn't handle the ramp curve basically Dofi gets to. So why Dofi is also strong in Blackbeard is because Doflamingo can basically get to 7 Dawn and play 2 bodies at the same time. He can play a 4, and then he can hopefully flop one out of his deck. But Luffy ramps into being able to do that, and then it just gets too wide too quickly. If Luffy goes second from Blackbeard, it is almost 100% an auto loss. If they go first, it's like 95% an auto loss. And then when you start to blocker up with your 12, 16 blockers, especially this card's kind of nuts as a blocker. Both of these are like insane. You just get this this extremely nice 5/6 value, and then 1 Dawn is a 7k swing. It's not like you need to play Luffy Taro on 7, but like having him in the matchup is just so annoying for them because like there's nothing really they can do about the card without like hyper investing resources and then having like no hand because they have to play around you playing another one, and it just works like that for like the rest of the game. And then also like this card, if they don't activate the ability because they're like, oh, I have Blackbeard now, like I'm safe so I don't need to activate it, and then this card gets loose, like all their math and whatever they think they're defending from is just completely gone. It's negligible, especially if Kid Blocker's on the board, because you're gonna get refunded Dawn and then you have like double Gum Giant in the back. So it's like really, really impressive. All that to say, he struggles in Shanks. He's okay in Dofi. It's like a race kind of, but it's like a dangerous race that you can play because like you're not starved, but he is. And the thing is that like your cards are a lot bigger than his are and get like a lot more value in the transition. If you double Luffy Taro into Dofi, you should probably win the game like on the spot through War of Attrition, especially if Sanguro is on the board. They're getting away from Gravity Blade, and then like, you know, Red Rocking a 7/8 is just like terrible. Like you can Red Rock a 9/10, but like they still have like a Gum Giant on the back burner. Blackbeard, Purple Luffy decimates him. Buggy, this is like kind of circumstantial. We'll place this here under 2 conditions. He's probably tier 1.5 in my honest opinion, but the reality is that he can be up here depending on if these 2 decks are the most popular. If these 2 decks are the most popular, it's kind of troll. If these 2 decks are the most popular, he's really, really good. It's not that he can't beat these decks, because he kind of does like double board spam too, but his hand advantage is far less than Purple Luffy's. The cards he's playing are far less impactful. He doesn't have as nearly good events, but he does have the 10-12 Buggy that if it resolves is like really strong. And then he has like a lot of really good cards that he can play. But Shanks kind of decimates him. Shanks is like really strong in him for a number of reasons. The first is that like your card's counter value doesn't really matter to Shanks. For number 1, he's going to be able to get rid of a lot of what you want to play and do, especially with like Silver Australia, Whitebeard. Like you're just kind of not really outvaluing that. And then once 10-12 Shanks gets on the board, all of your cards start to like get into these like funky number ranges for pressure that like he can just kind of deal with. Ben Beckman starts to become like a problem because all your 7Ks just auto get nagged off the board, and then everything else. But I'm gonna put him down here. I think he's like highest tier of tier 1.5. But like he is so strong in a Blackbeard, it's not funny. So if Blackbeard ever activates the ability to stop the on plays, which for the record he basically has to, otherwise like he's going to flat out board spam like multiple cards off like the Crocodile, he can just play the 10-12 for free. And the on play of the 10-12 basically states that like, hey, guess what, dude? I don't go to the bottom of the deck because it's part of my on play and you just negated it. And then now they have like a 10-12. Now I've had games against Buggy where like they basically have to see 3 of them, but if they see 3 of them, the game's over. If they see 2 of them, the game feels pretty over. Honestly, it doesn't really matter either way. And they will gladly go first, giving you the second curve because it almost does not matter. And then if you ever let anything go, they can like play like, I think it's like off the crocodile or something, just play out multiple bodies. And then again, it's the same problem with like Luffy and Dofy, right? Like they're playing out more bodies than he can get rid of, and they're all pretty high cost cards, like 5s and 6s. Finally, Doflamingo, the promo that he gets, like Dofy craps on this deck, except for that promo card, and that is a reason why I think like you almost have to play Red Rock. But what it says, if your leader is Buggy, all 3 and 4 costs cannot attack, and then on play, I'll play up to 1 6 or lower cross guild character from your hand. So this card is board spam, 7/8, not gonna get any value, but it shuts down literally every card in this list. It stops every card in this list that's not Josu and like Sengoku and Perona. Like that's it. Every other card cannot attack in my deck. Oh, and Buggy himself. That's funny. And then Red Rock is just so necessary. Like if you do not have this card to get rid of it, you're cooked. Like you have to get rid of it. Mihawk actually might be like very, very good in the matchup to be able to get rid of it. Like if you're playing around the Dofy and then like the spam, and a lot of people think that the Doflamingo return could also be good against this, but then they just replay it and then it's like, it is what it is. So and they can cheat this card out, right? So he can cheat this card out, but you stress 5 Dawn, play up to 1 discard 1 card from your hand and play this so that 5 Dawn, this card's coming down, which means you're going into 6, and if you don't have the Red Rock there, and you won't have much of a board unless you flop Jinbei, Weevil, and then like you did your thing. You basically need to go first in the matchup, hopefully double flop Jinbei, and then like that's like how you'd win, because if you get to this and then don't have the answer immediately, you're kind of cooked. And then again, he's like vomiting out multiple bodies. So yeah, but I mean, not a lot to say about this. He hard counters both of these. These decks have a lot easier time dealing with things. It's a real grind fest with this one because like you're body spamming, he's body spamming, and you take your own life to like ramp up to be able to do that. And he's like, I just kind of get to do that by pitching a card. So he loses advantage, you gain advantage, but you lose life. So it's like kind of like a race in that regard. But Shanks is probably comfortably like, you know how he is. Like Shanks has like been his rival the entire time. Like he's been the whole reason why like, he gets like slapped out of existence, and it's like super nice. Let's talk about Enel tier 1.25. It's really strong in a Dofy. It's dies the Blackbeard. All right, this is probably the reason why like Enel is down here. But if, in a meta where Doflamingo is like the best deck in the game and he's like number 1, and then this deck, like he destroys both of these like uber hard. Now Luffy can put out bodies that like hyper threaten like his game plan and take his own life so that like he can play underneath like a lot of the cards. The issue is that they keep printing cards that KO at 5 for yellow, and it's really annoying. So like we're now like at this point where like Enel just gets to do all this dumb BS and have like this card that KOs like Zorjiro and everything else. This card kills Sanguro. This card kills Sanguro. This card kills everything. This card puts anything like Luffy Taro to the bottom of the life. This card kills anything. It's like, please, like this is just getting like Thunderbolt. Like even my version, like my version of Enel that I'd be playing, like if I was gonna play this auto dies a Blackbeard. Just letting you know, you cannot win if you play against Blackbeard. You are cooked if they have like 2 Burgesses and 1 Blackbeard 10 drop. You're cooked. Doesn't matter. They turn off your leader ability. You have no on plays for the rest of the game, which means this doesn't work. This deck is so terrible into Blackbeard. Do not even think about playing it. Like he's not the only one on this list. There's another deck that also just auto loses to Blackbeard. But all that to say, against Doflamingo, this deck is crazy, right? Like this card is crazy against Doflamingo. This card is crazy against this card is crazy against this card is crazy. This card is also super crazy because it puts like all these other triggers into life. This card is super crazy. 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 And this card is just obnoxious. So it's just like this deck wipes the floor with Doflamingo, like just takes it out back and like beats it into the ground and then buries him. And he's got some other positive things. Against Shanks, it's a little bit difficult because what ends up happening in the Shanks matchup, you kind of trade and then he gets like 10-12 on the board, and it's like you need to like Rygo every turn, or his cards are just getting way too much value, and then you gotta like collapse and fall off. Like And then like there's other bodies like you need to worry about, right? You need to worry about Rayleigh, you need to worry about Whitebeard, you need to worry about like Lucky Roo and all this other stuff. Problem with Enel is much like the problem against like Blackbeard, like the more bodies they have, like the easier it is to kind of like get at them and kill them. And so like it's just kind of like a weird trade kind of scenario. So now a lot to say about Enel. He is going to be good though. Like if Dofi's like best deck in the room, this deck is like literally like sitting right there, right behind it. Like he is such a hard counter to Doflamingo, it's not funny. Same thing with like Buggy once you get the promo. Moving on, scrolling through here. Where is it? Where? There she is. Bunny. Mommy Bunny. I don't know where. I like maybe like right here. Like this is like flipping back and forth with Buggy, like super hard. Bonnie is like really strong. It's hard to say why she's so bad, but like also why she also feels so good. It's really good. She has the tools to make the game go elongated against like Blackbeard, and I think that's also one of the things that's like super strong is against Blackbeard specifically. She can tap the Burgess on the swing at you and then like kind of cook the Burgesses by just like Dawn dumping and attacking to it, and then like you can't really defend the card, and then you kind of just lose. The other thing about Blackbeard is that like there's a litany of cards that don't have on play in Bonnie that like are not affected by like his effect. So, and it gets like kind of weird, right? Like if I'm at like 7 Dawn and the reason you do that is to stop me from playing Cavendish, but I play down Basil, it's like you just negate a card for no reason, right? And nothing about the board state really changes. All her searchers are activate mains, but like with Bonnie, right? Like, so this is on play, this is not. This is on play, this is not. This is on play, this is not. I'm testing this right now. This is on play and when attacking. Thing that's so annoying about Carrot is this also is a when attacking. It's the same thing with Cavendish. It's like, even if I don't get this on play immediately, I can still get value out of the card, like eventually, which is like really good. This is on play, this is not. So like it just gets kind of weird, and like especially with Kid, like Kid just coming down is like, yeah, that's like a really safe spot unless you the 10 on the back end, right? And then to liberate most of these cards off the board is like all fine and dandy, especially this card. This card is like, the reason why I'm testing this is because this is basically Green's version of Lucky Roo. So if you don't know, it says on KO, rest up to one of your opponent's Dawn, or KO up to one of your opponent's 6 cost or lower characters. This is like actually super annoying, especially against Doflamingo, because you're going to get to free rest one of the cards and then like Pedro like stop an attack and kill the card. And so like as a blocker, he just has like an absurd amount of value in the matchup. And then these two combine like mitigate Dofi extremely hard, because if you don't know about Carrot, her on play keeps a 7 or less tapped. This is massive for a number of reasons. This hits Jozu and basically effectively makes him negligible on the board. And then if you like have a number of Carrots or Pedros, they just auto die. It doesn't matter. Zoro exists because Enel's a thing in 09, and I think 2 of him is a safe spot. You can cut a Basil for a Zoro because Basil's not nearly as strong because the whole shtick of Basil is like, oh, against black I'm gonna play this, against black I'm gonna play this, against black I'm gonna play this. All in all, overall it's fine, except for when they have like Liberate. It's the same thing problem with Ace, except for like with him it's a lot easier to like get to the point to Liberate, because like with Ace he's like a weird funky number, so it feels bad because you're usually over reducing for the card, but like when they're higher numbers like 6s and 7s, you don't mind playing Van Augur into Liberate, and the only thing that doesn't get rid of them is like Shigan and the Dot Q. All that to say is like you can see why this is a little bit weird. Like what do you do when like you're a 10 Dawn, right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna like do this against mine, and then they like play Zoro and you're like, oh boy. And then like you play down Blackbeard and you negate, you swing 5, like they don't care, and then they do it again. You're like, oh dude, like what are you talking about? Like I would probably like cut a Basil for another Zoro, just because like Zoro and that like against Blackbeard is just like an auto win, and not to mention Shanks as well. They're gonna have to keep pitching every turn, and then like you can just slowly get like little value, and then like if everything swings and they don't, and then this card comes down, oh boy, It's weird. But against like Doflamingo, she can really grind him out. Against Shanks, it's pretty annoying too, because like he's trying to be like really aggressive to her, but her game plan rests your blocker. She attacks over it. She can keep your stuff tapped and then like play super big bodies. This Shanks right here, this 9-cost Shanks, is like super good into their 10-12. Like they're gonna swing rush, you're gonna take probably that damage, you're probably not gonna take the other damage, probably mitigated something with a swing, and then like your Shanks comes down at 10 Dawn and pops that Shanks and asks them to have another card. And then it's like, oh boy, what do I do? And then Kid's super annoying as well, because like at that point you'll play Kid and then play Rosie blocker, and it doesn't even matter unless they can reduce this card through some means and then play Ben Beckman. They can do that with like the 2K and Ben Beckman, but they're getting a 2K out of their hand just to get rid of this card, and it does trash him, so like it does get around Rosinante, but you're not dead like by any means. Like they committed the whole turn to that. They're not gonna swing with their leader while this is on the board, so they're swinging, then you rest it, and then you Shanks the Ben Beckman off the board. It's a little bit weird. But she could also just like lose for like a whole host of other reasons, but she's one of those decks that it feels like if you build up, you win. And she's also pretty decent into Purple Luffy, but the problem with Purple Luffy is that he has a lot of tools that like hand check with law, just basically like rush down, out advantage. She doesn't have anything to check his hand. She doesn't have anything to really stop his ramp. Feels pretty weird. She's really good in Enel. Sanji is probably gonna be tier 2. He's like really good into Blackbeard and like really terrible into basically everybody else. So Purple Black Luffy also gonna be tier 2, maybe tier 1.5 at the back end, like maybe like 1.75 somewhere in here. Not a lot to say about this. His entire deck gets negged by Blackbeard. He doesn't generate like enough in it, especially when like you play against red and the removal's not based off of cost, it's based off of power. This deck is definitely tier 1. He ain't going anywhere, people. Sorry about you. Like, he won a Japan CS number 1, number 2. The only matchup in this entire spread that he is bad against is right here. If it's not Blackbeard, he has winning chances against everybody, and if he sees one card in particular, he wins. But let's talk about why Luchi is extremely meta relevant. There is a whole host of reasons why this deck basically trounces every meta deck that's not Blackbeard. And it's this card. There's a reason the ult of this is like $60 and it's like $45 for this base rarity. This card is completely absurd. This card is the MVP, the strongest card in the deck, by far, not close. Don't care what you're going to try and argue with me about. I'll argue this all day long. This 3-cost Brook is the only reason we are relevant. So why is that the case? Doflamingo wants to go first, which means we want to go second. And that is why we play 4 Suru and 4 Ice Age. My different Luchi, which I think this is a lot more. 2 Finger Pistol, 4 Suru, 4 Ice Age. And it's to support this card. Even if you go first, playing this on curve against Doflamingo is so pivotal because of any of the subsequent follow-ups that you have. If I like really wanted to like get nitty gritty, you could like probably cut this for like 2 more Hina. But I decided to put Jack in the list as like a filter card that also with leader effect can get rid of a 4 cost. So I was at one point playing 4 of Hina. The problem is in most matchups, if it's loaded with ground decks like Doflamingo or it's high cost cards, this card is just a Swiss Army knife against all of them. If you have Ice Age for reduction for high cost cards, this card can get rid of a card. And this is also why we play Laboon and Hina. So Laboon and this card are literally one of the nastiest combinations that you can have in the game. Number 1, the Brook is going to demand attention. They basically have to Law and Josu bounce this card every single turn, otherwise Doflamingo actually loses. If they don't see Law early and this card sticks for 1 turn, they literally can fall behind so far if you play a second one or a combination of other cards that present a threat to the board that's set up for the subsequent turn. What I mean by that, I Ice Age, pop one of their 4 costs and swing 5 into the rested card. Let's say they hit the nuts, they hit the Jinbei Weevil on their second turn. I play a Tsuru or an Ice Age and then I play Brook. Or I just have Finger Pistol, swing 5. Like, it's just one of these like kind of like removals, but let's just say that it's that. If they do not Law bounce this to my hand, and the subsequent turn is whatever is rested, right? I can play Laboon, then swing 5-6 with lead into whatever that is. Now they have 2 cards that they have to swing into to get rid of. And it's not exactly clear how they do that going into 6 or 7 Dawn. And then even at 7 Dawn, if they commit their entire turn to Grav Blade, I'm going to take that, because when they're going to 7, that means I'm going into 8. And now we're getting into my territory of Gecko, Moria, and Jack. And we're like now comfortably playing the game that we probably are wanting to play. The same thing with this Hina. RHL is actually a thing. If you don't know, like if you don't know, you don't know. But there's several things that you can do here that are like actually super nasty, especially if like Laboon lives. Like that's why like I decided to play him. If Blackbeard can get away with playing this card, Luchi can get away with playing this card. There's no reason why he can't. There isn't another card. And for the record, I know what someone in the comment section is going to say. Why wouldn't you play 4-cost Kuzan? I'll tell you why you wouldn't play 4-cost Kuzan over that, and it's this deck right here. You would not play 4-cost Kuzan against this. You're not going to get the draw, probably off the card, number 1. Number 2, the swing of that is probably not going to exist because of Van Augur.Q, Liberation, and then Finger Gun. You're not going to get the value of Kuzan. Whereas Laboon, when you play him, you get it right away. And he almost acts as a blocker because they basically have to get rid of him. They're like, if they have to get rid of this card against Blackbeard, they 100% have to get rid of it against Luchi. Because Luchi can KO far more cards than they can, and it's not close. And not just that, it's the fact that Jack behind him is insane. If you think that like Laboon and Brook is disgusting, Laboon and Jack is worse. This is a 7-cost, 8-cost with your leader swing every single turn dead. This card just demands attention. This card demands attention as well. It's not like he's just sitting over here being nothing. And look at the number of reducers we have. We have Brook himself, leader swing. Brook himself, Laboon. We have Suru. We have Valifa. We have Ice Age. We have Hina. We have Tempest Kick. We have so much reduction in the deck that this card is just sitting here getting litanies of value for no reason whatsoever. This card just becomes an apex cornerstone in the early game that can just translate to straight value wins late. I have had multiple games where I beat Shanks, and literally every turn, their 10-12 Shanks is just dying to a Brook. Like, let me give you some weird funky math. At 10 Dawn with a Brook alive, right? Leader swing, Laboon, this. Ice Age, then follow subsequent Laboon, Brook swing. Rebecca, Hina, Ice Age, Brook. Rebecca, Laboon, Ice Age, Brook. Tempest Kick, leader swing, Ice Age, Brook. You see what I'm saying? They're 10-12s. I had a guy literally message me on the sim the other day. He's like, do you understand how bad it feels to see my 10-12 Shanks die to a 3-cost Brook? I said, hey dude, it's what the deck's supposed to do. He's like, well, it's doing its dang job. And then there's this card. This is the card against Blackbeard that you must see. If you see 2 of them in the game, they are completely cooked. They're cooked, brother. They're cooked. It doesn't matter what you think. I don't care who you are, you're toast, okay? The reason why you're cooked is because if your 10-12s get minus off Tempest Kick, Ice Age, whatever combination, and then this card comes down, and then you pitch some rando card that's a brick, and then I KO your Blackbeard off the board, you've lost. You won't have the life, you certainly won't have the cards in hand, and you're gonna lose another one off of this guy. So it is just a monumental tempo swing. If you don't believe how strong this card can be, I encourage you to go watch the CS finals where the Luchi player beat Blackbeard. He got this card in his opening hand, saved it for the first Blackbeard, and trounced him because of this one card. He is so good in the Blackbeard matchup, it's not funny. And to top it off, he's this 9-9 body. Okay, so what, are you next turn gonna commit to getting rid of him? Because if not, like, it's a free 9 swing every turn. Even though your Gecko doesn't get like nearly as much value in the Blackbeard matchup, you can still play a vanilla 8-9, like why not, right? Same thing with Jack. Jack gets a far ton more value in getting rid of cards that, like, you know, you can just basically pseudo snipe. And then Brook, same thing. Brook can like snipe Lafitte off the board, like leader swing, reduce, and then like Brook swing, get rid of like a .Q, and this snipe something else. And Luchi's worst matchup by far is Blackbeard. If they do not see this card, this goes from a winning position to an auto loss almost. Rob Luchi cannot compete against Blackbeard in any form that does not have access to the trash Kaido. And the reason why the trash Kaido is also super important is because it can get around Burgess's effect, and it's the only card that you have in the entire deck that can do it. Jack doesn't do anything to the card. He just doesn't. Board is like 2 or 3 Burgesses, and like Jack's on the board, it's like it's not even really doing anything. And then the Burgesses can tax your hand by swinging into it, and then the first Blackbeard that comes down can negate the Jack, so it's not even really getting the effect on the following turn. If you don't have Kaido in that position, and they've like activated Blackbeard effect, and you don't have like another Jack to play on the board to like even have some kind of compensation of like removal for the Blackbeard, you don't do anything. That's why like the Kaido is like so important, because he hits such a high number at 7 to be able to get rid of the card. And this way the stars start to align a lot more for like what Luchi's game plan is. There's just so much he can do against every single one of these matchups. And it doesn't matter how high you get. Same thing for this guy. Luchi crushes him on the fact that like once he gets to 8 or 10 Dawn, the things he's gonna start doing to you if he has a reduction for your cards in hand, if you didn't like double Luffy Taro for purple Luffy, you're cooked. You are absolutely getting destroyed. If he has the reduction to get rid of your Zorojuro or your Sanguro on your early curve, and you just basically Luffy Taro, and the following subsequent of that is you losing the Luffy Taro, and you go into 9 and play like the 9-10 in that line, you lose. If they have like the reduction, which for the record, I pointed, there's like a billion cards to reduce, it feels, in this version of Luchi, and he is just literally tearing the competition apart. Shanks plays like a card a turn. Any deck that plays 1 card per turn against Luchi and it doesn't have its protection. But this is also why they are playing this ace. Like that, like this ace is like one of the only saving graces in the matchup, because without it, nothing you have is really gonna stick. There's too much low ground cost removing. Let's say that play this turn 1, you swing 8 at my life with Shanks. Well, this is still on the board. Turn 2, I play Broke Down on my curve and swing 6 into your life. You reduce me 1, either give me a counter or you just take the damage. It is what it is. And then you go into play this on the following turn. The reason why this can feel so terrible is because I can literally Ice Age this, play another Brook, and then swing into it and then get rid of it that way. Or if I've had a Brook in the trash, I can play like Rebecca, bring back a Brook and get rid of this. If I don't, oh boy. This card is going to start to generate a lot of value, because you can just stack 1 Dawn on its swing, and going to the odd curve, we're having that Beckman come up. Something is definitely going to get trashed on that regard, right? So that's why like this card sticking is like actually really strong. Giving that pressure against the rest of Brook that has to attack is just going to generate a lot of value, and the fact that he can be sticky is what's really important. It kind of sucks that he like auto reduces himself once he's removed, but like again, the only saving grace on the Shanks matchup, because without it, like you literally lose every card every turn. So Bonnie, he destroys her. Buggy is a little bit tough, but if he draws his removal, it destroys her, and he also destroys Enel. Foxy, just because I'm gonna hear some person ask me about this in the comment section. He's tier 2. I don't care that a guy got top 8 with him. Like he's not good. I don't understand why you'd even entertain playing this. Zoro is probably tier 2. We're just gonna quickly go through the rest of this. Law is tier 3. Probably tier 2. Should we just add another one like tier 4? Tier 4. Tier 4, definitely tier 4. If you're down here, you're memeing, okay? Tier 3, tier 3, tier 4, tier 4. You're capping, you're really capping. Smoker's probably like, I don't know about this. This is kind of an untested territory for me. I'm gonna put him comfortably in tier 2, but I think Smoker's like just super solid, a super solid deck. Ace is tier 2. I'll put him like right here. I mean, I'm tempted to put him. I'm gonna put him in 1.5. He's kind of like overtly oppressive. Kuro, your Memeon, Nami. She's probably like up here. So she drops a tier. She's not in tier 1 anymore. Thank freaking God this guy's around, because Jesus Christ, it is annoying to deal with this deck. However, she's got the tools, and she can do some stuff. So there's a Nami card coming out that when it swings, it lets you look for like top 5 for an event. It's really strong. Iceberg, nope. Kata's probably like tier 2. Vivi, nope. I've seen a lot of this in Japan, but nope. Probably put her tier 2. She's not bad. Like, she's never bad. She's just not great right now. I don't know. I don't know how to say. Like, Rebecca's like one of those decks. So she's like never bad. She's just like unique, grindy, passive. So she's not really attractive and to play in a lot of regards. But she like does stuff. Like, it's not like she's like terrible. Like, her game plan is like super annoying. Like when it goes off, and like she's got blue-black combination, which is the best combo in the game. Question mark. She has a litany of cards that she can play. Well, she's gonna get another Gecko Moria. Not sure how it's going to fare against this guy, but like, yeah, she'll get it. Lakercock, tier 3. Sabo, tier 4. Stop freaking playing this deck, dude. Every time I see this like deck on the sim, I literally went up against a guy the other day and he was like, Sabo. And I'm like playing Blackbeard and I'm like, really? Sabo? And he's like, yeah, why? I'm like, really? You're playing Sabo? He's like, well, I have an 80% win rate, but whatever. And then he quit. And I'm like, dude, don't. Stop coping on this leader. Bella Betty, tier 3. Maybe I should just bump these up. I'll put them both up to 1. So here's the thing about Bella. I hate decks like this. Gimmick aggro decks that just, it's not skillful. Like, I'm not saying there isn't skill to playing the deck. I'm saying it's not skillful. Like, pitching a card from your hand and your entire board getting boosted by 3,000 power as if you attach 3 Dawn to each of them isn't skillful. Right? And doing this with Karasu, making my leader 4K, isn't skillful, right? It doesn't mean you're good at the game because you can beat somebody's face in with a cheap ass effect like this. It doesn't mean that you're good. It doesn't mean that like you're doing anything. That being said, she does counter some of these decks. For example, Purple Luffy cannot win the game against her. Like, if you wanted to know what probably the hardest counter Purple Luffy is, it's probably Bella Betty. It's bad. If you're a 4-life leader, it's bad. If you're Blackbeard, it's terrifying. The whole deck, like, Blackbeard can keep up with removal and swing into the cards that are rested, but if he doesn't have his removal cards for like the early, like for example, if they play like the Bella Betty Searcher and then like you respond with .q, you're probably fine. Right? If you don't, if you play like the feet and then they like play the stupid Kuma card and then they like swing 6 and then the following turn is like Ivankov BS, yeah, you're probably good. Against Dofi, it's pretty bad. Dofi just has like a billion cards in hand and like really doesn't care, plays out multiple bodies just like you do, and then like cracks your board while having more life, more cards, and better removal. Is returning cross to your hand, like doesn't really care. And Shanks is probably one of the strongest decks in the game against her for several reasons. Like, Lucky Roo is just completely and utterly annoying. Ben Beckman gets rid of her cards. Newgate is like a jack for every single one of their cards on the board. And not to mention, like, Shanks is like the antithesis of what this entire leader is trying to do. Like the 10-12 Shanks. And this is all before we get to the fact that, like, Red Hawk and leader reduction just, like, completely decimates. And then against Rob Luchi, he eats her alive. Like, all your cards are super low. Thank you. Broke will kill 90% of them anyway. Rosie's probably tier 3. He's banned. Tier 4. Tier 3. Tier 4. This is probably tier 2. This is a leader that people need to stop playing. I thought she was good for a while, but the problem with her is that like she's a 4-life leader. She's the same gimmick effect and Dofi exists. Like, your whole hand size advantage thing doesn't matter. Yamato, she's probably back down here. She's probably a tier 2. I think that's probably fair. She's probably like high tier 2, a little bit over Rebecca, right behind Smoker. Maybe she's up here. We'll just put her at the front. Ray Juice, tier 2. Gecko. I'm actually gonna put him right here. So this is gonna be kind of like the troll pick. Hear me out for a second. There's a variant of this that's going around in Japan. I don't think it's like gonna top anything or win anything. So maybe I should probably put it down here in tier 2. But the reality is I played against it the other day and it is like the most annoying garbage that actually just outgrinds your advantage and you literally just lose. So there's another Gecko Moria coming out in 09 that when it's played to the board, you spam out a 2 cost from your trash. Well, let me tell you what that can be. That can be Cerberus, that can be the Anupe, which draws 2 cards and trashes 2 cards. So there's Hyper Filter, and then when you kill Anupe, they draw 2 cards and trash 2 cards. And then Hawkback then adds back the 8 cost Gecko Moria, which then plays down the other Gecko Moria, which plays out Anupe to draw them 2 cards and trash 2 cards. Then they play the Cerberus active, okay? So they're just all the time. recycling cards that with a couple dawns swing 5 at you, playing Hogback to just infinitely cycle, and then they do what Gecko Moria does best, which is like Corona, play bodies, and play Gecko Moria. Well, it's really annoying. I mean, really annoying. There isn't a good way to get rid of the Gecko Morias other than bottom decking them. You can't really KO them because Hogback literally just brings it back and it's like the same thing. Then they'll get into a Hogback cycle loop to just keep getting Gecko Moria on the board and then just keep pressuring you with Gecko Moria. I don't really know what to say to it. Like, it's kind of annoying. So for that, we'll put them up there. Odin, Hannibal. Dragon is put him at tier 3. Boa, we'll put her high tier 2. Put Vega also high tier 2. Boa's probably like back end of 1.5. She's like a draw Dofi. They're basically doing the same thing. Tier 2, Marco, high tier 1.5. I'm sorry, high tier 2. King tier 3. I don't know how to feel about this deck. Probably down here. Calgarez tier 2. Lim tier 2. Nico, this is also going to be a co-pick of mine, but I'm going to put her in tier 1.5. So like at the very, very back end of it, like tier 1.75, if I had a tier, is where I'd put her. She is in a class of her own when it comes to what she does, and like, make no mistake, man, like this deck is like actually kind of disgusting. Okay, so if you don't know what she does, she has Banish inherent to her effect. For the record, she is an extremely hard counter to Blackbeard. This is one of the hardest decks to counter Blackbeard ever to exist. It's like this, Purple Luffy, and Sanji are like the 3 decks that like Blackbeard just doesn't want to run into. Unfortunately, she just loses like other things like Shanks and Purple Luffy, like quite a lot. But here's why. So she has Banish, okay? And then when attacking, you can trash a trigger from your hand and ramp it on. She also has this card, right? On play, if your opponent has 3 or more alive, trash up to one of the cards from your opponent's life. So you're never getting cards to your hand. I'm gonna repeat it. You're never getting cards to your hand. And because you're never really getting cards to your hand, you're kind of playing with whatever's in your hand. And if it's bad, she wins. Because what happens is she hyper ramps up to insane cards and Gum Gum Giant and like all these other things while slowly playing bodies. And then she can play things like Yamato. She can play like Gear 5 Luffy to take another turn if she wants. She can play the Rush Luffy. She can play like Luffy Taro spam. She can do whatever she wants to do, and you can't really do anything about it. And even if you wanted to, you're losing resources every turn. She has cards that buff her. Give it to one of your leaders plus 3,000 just for playing the 2k to the board. And then she has many trigger effects that are super annoying, and so she can kind of just like grind people into the dust. But all that to say, she has some teeth there, but she's like obviously like not like the greatest, right? Now we're gonna do structure decks. Terrible. Tier 4. Kaido is not terrible. Kaido is probably like high tier 2. I'll talk about Kaido here in a second. I just want to fill this out real quick because it's like, oh look, you're banned. Screw you, guy. OP09. This is 1.5. Okay, so we'll talk about, now that we're at another list we're talking about, we'll go to Kaido real quick. So Kaido. Well, more and more when I play this deck, I'm like getting to realize that this deck is actually snapped. So number one, this card's existence is probably should not exist. Just being flat out honest with you. It's disgusting what this card can do and the states that it puts people in. Purple Luffy, this is the hardest counter to probably Purple Luffy in the entire game. It's nice that you have double Luffy Taro. Be ashamed if like their entire board just died. They literally cannot do anything about this card, right? They have like literally just have to start playing blockers, and then this card exists and this card exists. So if you blow up the entire board and then subsequently play Black Maria and then this card, they're cooked. And I don't care who you are, you're dead. Right? And this effect right here effectively says, congratulations, during the longer this game goes, the less life you have. Because as soon as I get to this card, or any combination of these cards that like re-ramp me, you lose. This deck is designed to hyper ramp to 10, get to this card. Once I get to this card, it's a 12 and a 7 and Black Maria. And everyone's like, well, he's a cope leader, you're coping, it's all that other stuff. Let me explain this for you in a manner that like should make sense to anybody who knows anything about like raw math in terms of play lines, right? If you're playing purple Luffy, right, and I'm playing Kaido, and I go first and you go first, you have to take life to ramp, and if I see this card, we're playing the exact same game, except for it doesn't cost me life. Furthermore, when I blow your board up and I have 5 life and you don't, you have 7 cards in hand because you will because of this card, I'm then just gonna blow up your board with a 10-12 and you've taken your life 2 or 3 times. That's 1 leader effect and this card swinging 1 time to put you to 0. Are you sure that's a game that you just auto win? Because I don't think so. And the other thing is what is it that you play that I can't besides Gum Gum Giant? And sure, Gum Gum Giant's an incredibly powerful card. But the reality is that you're going to have to spend multiple if I just attach 1 Dawn to this card to even do anything about it. Oh, you have a 9-10 rush? So does he, right? He has 1 too. And his card removes 1 instead of drawing a card, which removal for this deck is far more important than non-removal. We have Bond Clay to punish your big power swings. You know, it's funny, I have this card sit on the board and literally it's like Shanks wants to go 10-12 and it's like, okay, sure, yeah, go ahead. It's fine. Just do what you want to do, dude. And then also, this card just removing the entire Shanks board is crazy. Like, it can be absolutely crazy. So, Kaido's got some teeth to him. I'm actually even tempted to put it up here. This deck is really good. We'll do some Kaido gameplay and I'll show you guys. Like, this deck is, like, really good. And then Red Purple Luffy. So this deck is weird. I don't know what a good build for this is. I'm trying to figure it out. What I'm 100% certain, these cards are all mandatory. Like these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 6 cards plus this is all obligatory. That's probably obligatory. That's probably obligatory. Like the more, but then the more we fill it out, the more I just don't know, right? Like this card's like a better queen, but it's not a better queen because it's not a 6K swing. Rip. This card's really good, but I go back and forth with the card. Yeah, it draws me a card, and that's fantastic. But sometimes it's bricky, and yes, we have Giant, which is fine. I acknowledge that we have Giant. That's great. But in the Dawn minus for the rush, and then the leader get it back is like really cool, right? Like I just feel like I don't know. I really like this card a lot too because you take 1 damage and Thunder Bagua is instantly online. And so if you don't know what that does, your leader up to one of your characters gains 4,000 for the battle, and if you have 2 or less life cards, add up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn and add it rested. Yeah, this card is crazy in this deck for like a number of reasons. At late game, like let's say that your opponent thinks that they can kill you and you pass with like 6 Dawn open. This card coupled with Giant can like give you some like pseudo recovery. You Gum Gum Giant, get rid of 2, and the Thunder Bagua gets you 2 back so that the next Gum Gum Giant will leave you in the range of still going back up to 10. So it's like really good. This is I basically stole this from Shanks. This is like the version of like Red Hawk, except for we can't really do anything with Red Hawk because we don't have the reduction that Shanks does. But we can go down to 2 and then get free ramp while getting out of high powered swings against us. So I think that like that kind of like justifies the card. I kind of like it a lot. But all that to say, I don't really know what a good build for this is yet. Like I put my hands up in the air and I ask you guys what is it that you think is really good for this, because his identity is like starting to get torn in too many different directions and I just don't know what is the most solid. But I feel that like this combination is still like the nastiest combo in the game, because like just dropping a second new gates behind this and making a 9K leader is just completely crazy. Moving on, Useless Kid. Uda is probably tier 3. Zoro's probably tier 3. Radio Sabo's tier 3. I hate this deck, but you know, people play it. BY, this is something to talk about. I think it would be Cope to put him in tier 2. This is probably the worst meta matchup for BY that's like ever existed. For a number of reasons, 4 right here are all better than he is by a long shot. Blackbeard auto wins against BY. It's not close. I don't care if you think that you're him. You're not. You're not going to be him, and you're never him. I'm letting you know. You play against a good Blackbeard player, you're not him. There's a reason why BY Luffy has not even been in a top 4 for like any CS. Okay, top 8, I don't even know if there's any in top 8. Top 16, I think like maybe 1 makes it, and then like it just instantly gets clapped by like whatever Blackbeard Doflamingo player is sitting up there. These two decks particularly are probably like the arguably like number 1, number 2 decks. I think that Shanks is like the overall best, but all 4 of these decks just completely annihilate him. First off, Gum Gum Giant like just doesn't care. Like he just doesn't care. I play Luffy Taro and Sanguro. Luffy Taro, Sanguro, you've lost. I don't care that you have like your 9k bodies. As soon as you take 1 of your life at any position in that point, and I start swinging out, it's gonna cost you the entire kitchen sink and the entire house you live in and all your collectibles and all of your like assets just to live through whatever onslaught that is coming to you from that. Not to mention, they're probably drawing cards in the process. Purple Luffy's game plan is far too strong, and then when you go to try and kill him, and he just triple giants you out of whatever godforsaken existence that you think that you're winning, and then he Usahachi rests your Sabos, it just ends up going really south, really bad for you, and you can't really do anything about it. Rob Luchi is still probably the best deck that you're against, but as I pointed out with the list that I was playing earlier with Rob Luchi, you have a whole litany of problems. These 2 cards are like the best cards in the game against you, and if they see this card on curve properly 1 time and get rid of your first Gecko Moria, you're cooked. It doesn't really matter if this is on the board, this is on the board, and they follow with their own Gecko, it's fine. It's so bad we don't even really need Sabo anymore. Some Dofis play Grav Blade, some don't. I'm not right now, but Gravity Blade just flat out destroys your deck. If you're playing against Boa, they're definitely playing Gravity Blade, which just murders you. And then Shanks is just your worst nightmare on steroids. Ben Beckman trashes cards, and he plays multiple 10-12s that have Rush written on them. Okay, so yeah, you're going to be able to block out. He's going to then be able to counter that with flat out swinging another 10-12. And then when you're at 0 life, Gold Roger just gets to punch through you for free. So if they like set up multiple Shankses and you get them 0 or you're at 0, Gold Roger then will allow the 12k swing, the 12k swing, and the 13k swing to go through uninhibited. You've lost. He's still the best against Luchi. That's it. Like if Luchi's good, if people think that Luchi's super good, then it's possible that BY can still have some kind of meta presence, but other than that, not really. And Blackbeard, just in case you're not aware, I'll explain it to you so that you just kind of understand this. Blackbeard, basically, from the time you get to 5 Dawn, will turn off your effects every single turn. This does a whole litany of things to you, especially when they take second from you. If they take second from you, your Kuzan will do nothing, okay? You won't draw a card. Your Sabo will not filter. Your Yellow Luffy that takes a life is probably going to get nagged off the board immediately. You will never have protection for anything on your board. Your Gecko Moria will never do anything. And the turn that you play it for vanilla, they will play the 10-12 Blackbeard, neg Gecko Moria so it can't swing. And then now they have a 10-12 blocker. You have no on plays. For the record, you can't get rid of Jesus Burgess's at all. This is like the current iteration of BY. I played against a BY Luffy that was playing 9-cost Kaido, question mark. He lost, by the way. It didn't matter. But I mean, look at this. Even this is an on play. None of your cards do anything. None. The only big cards that do anything are these 2 Luffys. They're activate mains. Everything else is on play, bro. Your Flampe is on play. You can't take your own life. You're not even in control of when you lose your own life. Unless this card's on the board. Same thing with her. Same thing with her. You can't take your own life. This matchup is so abysmal. So bad. That like you are forced to double Flampe immediately if it's in your hand, if they've given you the turn at 3 Dawn, which they're probably going to give you. You almost have to get rid of 2 2Ks out of your hand out the gate just to even have a chance at winning the game. And you're probably cooked either way. He's not good. Thank God, because I absolutely hate this deck. I hate this deck with a passion. This deck feels... And I'm just going to say this, right? We don't want a side tangent rant here in the tier list, but like this deck feels like playing against Nami. He forces you to play the game completely differently. You cannot play one piece when you play against this deck. You can't attack, which is just so stupid. And then he becomes this unkillable 9k double blocker BS with this card. Thank God Blackbeard exists, because this leader should just be axed and banned out of existence. Both her and Nami, both of these leaders need to be banned. They need to be banned. But thank God Blackbeard exists to check this guy, because I am sick of seeing him be good. I'm sick of him in 8.5. I'm sick of him in OP09, and I'm sick of her too. I'm glad both of these decks have a hard counter in Blackbeard to exist. And then Pudding. Yeah, Pudding and Grab Blade. So ST14, tier 2. Reduda, okay. Tier 3 in its own garbage. I mean, you should just put it down here. It's so bad. Can't play it. Okay. So tier list would probably look something like this. That's for every leader in the game in 09 up to date. 010, I'll add the other stuff into the folder. But I think this is a list that a lot of people could probably agree with. Tier 1 is probably like all these. If you're not these 5, you're probably not really doing anything. And like Luchi's kind of like hanging in this tier. He's not like, yeah, he's hanging. He could do some stuff. He's like the baseline of like tier 1. All these decks are just far and above like doing some hot nonsense, and he's been doing the same level of hot nonsense for a while now. He's got some issues, right? Like this guy is like the worst counter to him to exist. And I think it's comfortable for me to put him up here. But he is also hard checked by a lot of like what these other decks do. I think that this is a pretty solid, if you like take a look, maybe this can come down here, and then maybe he can. I think that this is pretty solid up here. I don't think anybody's really going to disagree with this. Anybody who's played this knows that like this deck can just squeak out wins off of like high value. I lost to one the other day that took like he literally just played Gear 5 spam and then like saw 3 of them in the same game, and you can't just take 12 Ks all the time, Black Moria, and then just expect to win the game. Like it's just not gonna happen. Bonnie is really good. BY is thank God. And like here's the thing, man, he is just so hard countered by stuff. Like I almost want to put him down here, but I know that he has representation and standing in Japan that demands that he's a little bit higher than that. So same thing with Nami. Buggy, he's really exciting because he looked so bad on paper, but like now like he's kind of good. So Enel, and then we got Boa. She's just generically good blue, and I think that that's pretty fair. And then RP Luffy, and then everything else is like flavor of choice. Good luck to you. You're probably gonna do your thing, and then yeah, I think that everything else is fair. This isn't banned, but this is like the very bottom of tier 4. This is don't play. This is can play at your own peril. This is can do some stuff, but it's most likely going to lose to everything that's in the tiers above it. And then this is like knocking at the door of tier 1. I wish I was up here, but I'm just not quite as strong as these decks, and these are the strongest decks in the game. So I think that it's a pretty good list. I hope you guys enjoy it, and let me know in the comment section down below what you think, and I will see you guys next time. This is Marcus from TCG Discussions. I'll be signing off. Laters.